You sit quietly in your favorite chair at home. You believe your thoughts are completely locked inside your skull. You assume that silence protects your private inner world. We live under the illusion that our minds are completely isolated territories. We believe that our skull acts as a perfect soundproof barrier. We assume that no one can hear the quiet dialogue inside. We think that unless we speak, our thoughts remain completely silent. But our bodies are constantly translating our thoughts into physical movements. Every emotion triggers a complex sequence of physiological reactions inside us. Our heart rate shifts, changing the subtle pulse in our neck. Our breathing patterns change, shifting the rise and fall of chest. Our skin temperature drops, changing the microsweat on our palms. These tiny physical shifts are completely invisible to other human observers. We are too busy listening to words to notice these signals. But the animals around us have no words to distract them. But a silent observer is sitting on the rug. A dog is watching your face with steady, quiet intensity. He is not waiting for a command or a treat. He is reading the subtle shifts in your physical body. He reads the tension in your jaw and your shoulders. He monitors the pace of your breathing and your heartbeat. To this animal, your mind is not a private room. It is a broadcast station sending signals you cannot control. If you want to understand this connection, look closer. Here, an extraordinary sensory system is reading our hidden states. For centuries, humans believed that language was our only communication. We thought that words were the only path to share thoughts. We assumed animals were deaf to our internal mental state. We told ourselves that thoughts were invisible to the wild. But the creatures around us are proving science wrong. The animal mind is tuned to a completely different frequency. It operates on a level of sensory awareness we ignore. This awareness allows them to read our intent before we act. Today, we unlock the science of animal mind reading. We reveal the history of the legendary horse Clever Hans. We show how dogs smell our stress and emotions. Please stay with us until the very end of our journey. We will share a profound realization about our place in nature. We are not isolated minds living in private mental spaces. We are open books, constantly read by the animal observers. To understand this reading, we must travel back in time. We must go to Berlin in the early 20th century. Here, a horse named Clever Hans amazed the entire world. Hans was a beautiful black Orlov Trotter carriage horse. His owner was a retired schoolmaster named Wilhelm von Osten. Von Osten believed that animals were as intelligent as humans. Von Osten was a retired schoolmaster who loved animals. He started by showing Hans numbers written on a blackboard. He would hold Hans's leg and tap it on the ground. He rewarded Hans with sweet carrots and sugar cubes for correct taps. Hans learned the association between numbers and taps very quickly. Soon, Hans could answer questions from other people. He could calculate the date of the next Sunday. He could identify musical tones and play simple melodies. The public was absolutely astonished by his mathematical genius. People thought Hans was a sign of the next evolutionary stage. They believed horses possessed a hidden capacity for human language. Wilhelm von Osten spent years working with Hans in his courtyard. He started with simple matching games using colored blocks of wood. He taught Hans to associate the number of taps with objects. Von Osten used a system of positive reinforcement to encourage him. He gave Hans sweet carrots and bread slices for correct answers. Soon, Hans could solve equations that were written on a board. He could identify spelling mistakes in German words on the cards. The public believed that Hans possessed a human-like logical intelligence. They thought the horse was proof of high animal reasoning skills. Philosophers argued that Hans proved that language was not unique humans. The Orlov trotter became a major celebrity in early Berlin society. Reporters wrote stories about the genius horse that could think logically. Even skeptics were unable to find any evidence of active fraud. The horse performed his math even when strangers asked the questions. This ruled out the possibility of a simple, pre-arranged secret code. He spent years teaching Hans to read, write, and calculate. Soon, Hans could answer complex mathematical questions with ease. He could add, subtract, multiply, and divide large numbers. He tapped his hoof on the ground to indicate answers. 1 tap meant 1, 2 taps meant 2, and so on. Hans could also tell the time and read German words. He spelled out words by tapping a code with hoofs. People flocked from all over Europe to see the wonder. Scientists, politicians, and educators watched Hans perform his math. They tested him with questions written on large cards. Even when von Osten was not in room, Hans succeeded. The horse seemed to possess human-level logical reasoning skills. In 1904, a commission was formed. They wanted to investigate Hans and find the truth. The commission was composed of 13 experts from different scientific fields. It included the director of the Berlin Zoological Gardens search. It also included a circus manager and several school teachers. They examined the horse's stable and the surrounding courtyard area. They watched Hans perform under many different weather conditions daily. They could not find any evidence of training or trickery. This made the mystery of Hans even more famous in Germany. The commission included eminent psychologists, teachers, and horse trainers. They tested the horse in many different controlled situations. They found no signs of trickery or deliberate training cues. The commission concluded that Hans's abilities were indeed real. But a young psychologist named Oskar Pfungst was not satisfied. Oskar Pfungst was a young student of psychology in Berlin. He set up a tent to perform his experiments under controlled light. He used cards with questions that the handler could not see. When the handler did not know the card, Hans was confused. He would tap his hoof continuously, looking for a cue. Or he would stop tapping immediately after the first tap. Pfungst also tested Hans in complete silence to avoid acoustic cues. He used a screen to hide the handler's face from Hans. This proved that Hans was relying entirely on visual body language. He noticed that even a millimeter head tilt was enough for Hans. When a person asks a question, they lean forward. They hold their breath and look at the horse's hoof. As the correct tap is reached, knees, they relax their head. They look up at the horse's eyes with relief. This tiny head movement is the signal Hans was waiting for. Pfungst was a pioneer in the field of experimental psychology research. He realized that to find the truth, he must control variables. He designed a series of tests to isolate the horse's senses. He wanted to see if Hans could hear the correct answer. He tested Hans in complete silence, but the horse still succeeded. Then Pfungst decided to hide the questioner from Hans's view. He used a large wooden screen to block the horse's eyes. When Hans could not see the questioner, his accuracy plummeted. This was the key that unlocked the mystery of the horse. Hans was not calculating math, but reading the human face. When a person asks a question, their body posture shifts. They lean forward slightly, focusing all attention on the hoof. They unconsciously hold their breath, waiting for the correct number. This tension builds up with every tap of the horse's hoof. When the horse reaches the correct number, the tension breaks. The questioner raises their head, exhales, or shifts their weight. This micro-movement is the signal that Hans was waiting for. Pfungst measured these micro-movements using a special recording device. He proved that even a tiny eyebrow raise was a cue. The questioner was completely unaware that they were sending cues. He wanted to perform a series of rigorous scientific experiments. Pfungst noticed that Hans's accuracy dropped in specific conditions. If the questioner did not know the answer, Hans failed. If the questioner was out of Hans's sight, Hans failed. This was a critical clue that shifted the entire investigation. Pfungst realized Hans was not calculating the math himself. Instead, Hans was reading the body language of the questioner. When a question was asked, the questioner became tense. They leaned forward slightly, waiting for the correct number. They held their breath as the horse tapped his hoof. As the horse reached the correct number, the tension broke. The questioner stood up straight or relaxed their shoulders. They raised their eyebrows or tilted their head slightly. These micro-expressions were tiny, involuntary movements of the body. The human questioner did not even know they were doing them. But Hans was hyper-aware of these tiny physical shifts. He watched the face, the neck, and shoulders of questioner. He knew that when the tension broke, he should stop. Pfungst proved this by wearing blinders on the horse. When Hans could not see the questioner, accuracy fell. This discovery became known as the clever Hans effect. In science, it refers to researchers giving unconscious cues. But Pfungst's discovery did not prove that Hans was stupid. Instead, it proved Hans possessed a superhuman sensory awareness. He could read microexpressions better than any human psychologist. He had developed a highly refined system of visual reading. But this visual reading is only one part of the story. To understand the full scope, we must look at smell. Dogs possess a sense of smell that is legendary. Dogs have an olfactory system that is incredibly complex. They have up to 300 million olfactory receptors in nose. Humans only have about 6 million of these receptors. The part of the dog's brain that processes smell is large. It is 40 times larger than the same human brain region. When a human is stressed, their body chemistry shifts instantly. Sweet glands release volatile organic compounds that carry this chemical message. The Belfast study proved that dogs can smell these compounds. The dogs did not need to see the stressed humans. They identified the stressed sweat sample with high accuracy. This proves that dogs can smell our internal emotional states. They smell our fear, our anger, and our joy. Canine scent detection is a marvel of biological engineering in nature. A dog's nose has a large surface area for scent receptors. They can detect the equivalent of 1 drop in pools. The Belfast study set out to test if stress sweat smells. The researchers used a strict scientific protocol to collect sweat samples. The participants did not show any outward signs of stress testing. They did not scream or cry during the math task, but their bodies were releasing cortisol and adrenaline into the blood. These stress hormones changed the chemical composition of their sweat sample. The dogs were presented with 3 jars to smell during trials. 1 jar held the stress sample, while others held relaxed. The dogs identified the stress sample with remarkable accuracy and speed. They did not need any visual or auditory cues from humans. This proves that stress sweat carries a distinct chemical signature indeed. Your dog knows when you are stressed before you realize it. They smell the chemical changes in your breath and sweat daily. This olfactory reading is a constant part of their social lives. They use scent to evaluate the emotional state of the pack. This allows them to respond to threat cues without any words. The chemical landscape of the home is filled with these signs. The researchers spent months training the dogs for the scent test. They used positive reinforcement to teach them to sit near stress. The dogs learned to ignore the neutral and relaxed sweat samples. They only received rewards when they correctly identified the stress jar. This training ensured that the dogs' reactions were highly reliable. The dogs performed their search in a quiet, distraction-free room. Their accuracy remained high across many different testing sessions daily. This olfactory reading is a complex, continuous map of the environment. Every person leaves a unique chemical trail in the air behind them. Dogs follow these trails to track our movements through the house. They know which room we visited by smelling the air currents. They can detect the exact moment when our mood changes shifts. This explains why dogs are so sensitive to our emotional states. Their olfactory system is up to 100,000 times stronger. They can detect chemical compounds in parts per trillion easily. In recent years, researchers decided to test this chemical reading. At Queen's University Belfast, scientists designed a stress study. They recruited 36 human participants for the testing. They took breath and sweat samples from them before testing. The participants were relaxed, sitting quietly in a room. Then, the participants were given a difficult mathematical task. They had to count backward from 9,000 in intervals. They had to do this quickly. Under high social pressure, their heart rates and blood pressure rose significantly during task. Immediately after the task, researchers took second sweat samples. These samples were placed in glass jars for the dogs. 4 dogs were trained to search these jars for stress. They had to identify the stressed sample from relaxed samples. The results shocked the scientific team of researchers. The dogs identified the stress sample in 94% of trials. They did not see the humans or hear their voices. They relied entirely on the chemical compounds in the sweat. When humans are stressed, our bodies release cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones produce volatile organic compounds in our sweat. We cannot smell these tiny chemical changes ourselves at all. But to a dog, they are as loud as a scream. They smell our anxiety, our fear, and our excitement immediately. This chemical reading is also seen in equine heart rates. At the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, researchers studied horses. Horses are prey animals, so they are hyper-aware of threat cues. In the wild, they rely on the herd to detect predators. They monitor the breathing and heart rates of other horses. If one horse panics, the entire herd runs away instantly. When humans handle horses, they become part of this herd. The horse reads the handler's heart rate and micro-tensions. The Swedish study showed that handlers and horses' hearts synchronized. When the handler felt nervous, the horse's heart rate rose. This synchronization occurred through the lead rope or simple contact. This shows that our internal physiological states are shared. Horses have lived as social prey animals for millions of years. Their survival depends on their ability to read herd members quickly. If one horse detects a predator, its heart rate spikes instantly. This cardiac spike is communicated to the herd through subtle movements. The entire herd can run away before seeing the predator themselves. When a human handles a horse, a temporary herd is formed. The horse reads the human's heart rate through the lead rope. The Swedish study proved that heart rate synchronization is very real. When the handler felt fear, the horse's heart rate rose immediately. This physiological synchronization happens without any spoken words or commands. It is a silent, heart-to-heart communication system in the wild. This means we are never truly isolated from our animal companions. They are constantly reading our physical and chemical signals every day. Our private thoughts are broadcast to the creatures around us daily. We are part of a larger, silent conversation in the world. The researchers used heart rate monitors on both species during walks. They measured the cardiac activity in beats per minute continuously. The handlers wore headphones to receive instructions during the tests. They did not know when the scary object would appear beforehand. This prevented the handlers from anticipating the threat and tensing. Yet, the horse still synchronized its heart rate with the handler. This proves the physiological connection is incredibly fast and direct. The horse's heart rate monitor recorded every single beat with precision. The data showed a direct, linear relationship between both species' pulses. When the handler relaxed, the horse's heart rate fell in seconds. This proves that relaxation is as contagious as fear in herds. It allows handlers to calm nervous horses by controlling their breathing. This biofeedback loop is a powerful tool for equine training methods. They wanted to see if horses sync with human heartbeats. They had handlers walk horses past a scary umbrella object. The researchers monitored the heart rates of both horse and human. They found that when the handler's heart rate rose, horse followed. The horse's heart rate increased before it saw the object. The horse read the handler's microtension and heart rate shifts. They synchronized their physiological states through the lead rope. This synchrony is a vital survival tool for social animals. It allows the herd to react to danger in seconds. If one member feels fear, the entire herd knows immediately. They do not need to scream or make loud warnings. They read the physical and chemical state of their neighbors. Now, let us bring these three loops together at last. Let us look at the grand realization of this science. When you sit with your dog, look at him. The animal represents a mind tuned to your body signals. Its eyes are watching your micro-expressions. Like Hans did, its nose is smelling your chemical stress compounds daily. Its heart is synchronizing with your internal pulse rate. And this brings us to the ultimate, humbling human realization. We believe that we are the sole authors of our thoughts. We think our inner lives are completely hidden from the world. We assume that silence is a perfect shield for secrets. But the animal world is reading us constantly. We are broadcasting our fears, our joys, and our tensions. The creatures around us are silently listening to our bodies. They know our intent before we have even named it. This means we are never truly alone with our thoughts. We are connected to a web of silent sensory observers. The next time you sit near an animal, remember signals. Breathe deeply. Relax your shoulders and calm your mind, because they are watching, they are smelling, and reading. If this video changed your perspective, leave a like today. Please subscribe to our growing channel, named Wild Sentience. It helps us grow and share these stories with you. Tomorrow morning, look out at the beautiful wild world outside. Remember the silent observers and connections in the green trees. They are not empty, unfeeling biological machines in the grass. They are feeling, remembering, and dreaming of their own worlds. I read every single comment on our channel. Hearing your stories is the highlight of my day. It shows how you connect with wild neighbors around you. Tell us your stories in the comments section below today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next.